And we're back. So let's go ahead and figure out how to format this properly. Now, to the untrained eye, we might say, wow, that looks pretty good to me, but there's some things that need to be changed. So let's go ahead and take care of that. Now, in the previous video, I pointed out that the second source and the third source, they have this kind of really faint gray highlighting. If we're not really paying attention, it's really hard to see. It's so faint. But that's there. So we need to correct that. There's some other things that we need to do there. So notice before I do start doing that, notice that this right here, WashingtonPost.com, is in italics. Italics is that kind of more slanted font. The reason that's in italics is because this is the title of that website. Titles are in italics, at least titles of bigger work. So like a website is in italics. Now this article is called "The Big Problem with the American Dream." That is the title of the article, but it's found on this bigger thing, which is the website itself. So that's in italics. And then it says over here, Gale in context, opposing viewpoints. That's the name of the database we found that in. That's in italics. This one down here, Beijing Review, that's the name of the journal that this article came from, or what it was published in initially. That's in italics because it's the title of that journal. And then this one right here, The Atlantic, that's in italics because that's the title of that website where we found that particular source from. So I want to pay attention to those things. What's in italics? Now, what I'm going to do next is going to erase those italics. So I need to figure out, I need to italicize them again after I do what I'm going to do. So I'm going to press Command A to highlight. Now I'm using a Mac, so it's Command, but if you're using a PC, then it would be Control. So you hold Control and press A, and that will highlight all of your text in the document. And I'm going to go up here, and this is in Google Docs, of course. Click Format. And then I'm going to go down to Clear Formatting. So what this will do is it's going to kind of put it back at square one. It's going to get rid of all the formatting so it can kind of start over. So it got rid of all the formatting. Oh my goodness, look at this mess. So before I forget, I'm going to go ahead and put those different titles back in italics just so I don't forget. So the WashingtonPost.com, title of that. The database that we found that on, I'm going to italicize that. The second source, written by Natasha Locke, here's the title of the article itself, but the journal that it was found in needs to be italicized. So Beijing Review there, we're going to italicize that. And then this third source, the title of the article is this in quotations, but the title of the whole website is The Atlantic, right? So I'm going to italicize that. Cool, got that out of the way. Now I need to do what's called a hanging indentation. So if we're not really familiar with MLA format, we may not really know what that means. I'll explain that in a minute, but first I want to show how to do it. So an indentation is so at the start of a new paragraph, just if we're writing an essay at the start of a new paragraph, we always press Tab, and that will put that little half space there. That signals to the reader that it's a new paragraph beginning, right? That's just a way to kind of help organize visually. For a works cited page formatted according to MLA guidelines, we want to have an indentation, but we want to do the reverse of that. It's called a hanging indentation. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that space. I need to indent, keep the first line all the way at the left margin, but I'm going to indent every subsequent line in that citation. So how do I do that? I'm going to go ahead and click my cursor onto the second line, and then I'm going to go to Format, and then I'm going to go to Align and Indent, and go over to this menu. So we have a bunch of options here, but I'm going to go all the way to the bottom of that menu, Indentation Options. Click it. Okay, so I'm going to ignore this right here and just go down to where it says Special Indent, and I'm going to click this drop-down menu, and I'm going to select Hanging. let's apply it. So let's click the apply button. Shabroom! Alright, cool. So it did it. So the first line of that particular source, the citation for that source, is all the way at the left margin, but every subsequent line in that particular citation is indented. Now in a second I'll show you what that means exactly. So I'm going to repeat that process for the next two sources. So not the first line, I'm going to go to the second line of that particular citation, go to Format, go to Align and Indent, go to Indentation Options, click under Special Indent, click the drop-down menu to select Hanging, and then apply it. And it did it. Do that for the third source. I go to the second line. Boom. Cool. So in a works cited page, this is actually how a works cited page would be formatted. It's a little different for an annotated bibliography, and I'll explain that in a second. But if this were just a works cited page, say I needed to look up one of the sources, I'm reading somebody's essay and I want to check out one of those sources. I want to say, oh, that seems like a really interesting source. I want to actually look it up so I can read it myself. So I go to the works cited page and then I look down and I see that each source has the first line sticking out to make it visually easier to find. Now, to make it even easier, we need to adjust something here. MLA calls for our works cited page being to be arranged in alphabetical order. So this first source doesn't have an author, and the reason for that is there's probably multiple authors, or it just wasn't an author listed, which sometimes might be the case. So MLA is all about getting to the point, so if there's no author available, then you skip to the next thing, which is the title of the article. But I still arrange it according to alphabetical order. So we're going to skip that article. Articles don't count, the there, and go to B. B alphabetically comes first before any of these other sources. But G comes before L, right? So I'm going to go ahead and select this one. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to delete that. And then I'm going to paste it in the correct order. I'm going to get rid of that extra space in there by deleting it. And there we go. It's arranged alphabetically. So this makes things a lot easier for your readers to find the different citations for the sources you're using. Now on a paper that only uses 3 sources, that's not that difficult, right? But if you're writing a 20-page essay, a 20-page research paper, you're going to have a lot of sources in your works cited page, right? So that's where it's going to be even more important. The next thing I want to do, just to make sure the formatting is right, I'm going to go ahead and select the whole thing again, and I'm going to adjust it to Times New Roman, 12-point font, and there we go. Now this is, like I said, this is what it would look like for a works cited page, but an annotated bibliography is, we include an annotation for each of the sources. So in that case, this is component 1 of the annotation for the entry. So I need to, then I could begin, I can have my summary of the source. So this would, of course, is 5 to 7 sentences where you detail the focus of the source, how the author supports the argument, etc. And then the second paragraph is the assessment of the source. Right, so you're offering a few sentences that provide an assessment of the source's quality, what's valuable in the source. Maybe the source might have some limitations. What are those limitations, etc. And then the final component for the annotation is an indication of how the source will be used. Oops, not sued. Will be used, right? So in your annotated bibliography, of course, all of these would constitute the annotation for that one source, or what we call an entry, right? So you do that for all the sources. Okay, let's look at Microsoft Word. So again, I've mentioned this before in previous videos. I don't have Microsoft Word installed on my computer, so I'm using the version that is through Outlook, which I access through my email account for Cypress College. So some of the features might look a little different, but they're all here. So when I was showing everyone how to format their essays according to MLA guidelines in one of the previous videos, I pointed out something that Microsoft Word does that Google Docs doesn't do that is a little bit annoying. I find it annoying. And that is adding this annoying additional space between anything that whenever I press the enter key or the return key to skip to a new line, it automatically adds an additional space, which in MLA format, the document needs to be entirely double spaced, no extra spacing between any paragraphs, etc., etc. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to press Command A to highlight all of that, and I'm going to, instead of having it on normal, I'm going to select no spacing, and then it gets rid of that. Now here it also got rid of all my formatting. So again, I want to make sure that I am italicizing what needs to be italicized. Same thing I did in the Google Doc one. Title of that journal is Beijing Review, so let's italicize that. Title of this website is The Atlantic. There we go. So, how do we create the hanging indent in Microsoft Word? Well, it's very similar to Google Docs. Actually, maybe it's slightly easier. So I'm going to just click on the second line here, and then up here I have a collection of the different things that deal with spacing and indentations, etc. I'm going to click this icon where that, so it has the first line there, and then underneath it has the hanging indentation, and then it describes it as special indent. I'm going to click that drop down menu and then click hanging, and it does it just as it did in Google Docs. So I'll repeat that process. Cool. Now I want to go ahead and alphabetize that. So I'm going to do the same thing I did in the other one. So copy that one, delete it, and then I'm going to insert it here. Oh my goodness, look at all those spaces. Delete those spaces. Now I showed you how to do this in the previous video, breaking the link apart. See how there's all this wasted space? I want to go ahead and break that link apart, so I'm going to find a good spot to press this. I'm going to put my cursor there, press the space bar, and then boom, it will do that. Now I also want to get rid of this the hyperlink. So I'm highlighting the link, and I'm gonna click link, and then get rid of the address, and it will do that. So keep the display text because we want to show our readers what the hyperlink is, but we don't want them to actually make it a blue thing. So I'm just going to delete that. So it just changes it to the regular font. And then of course, what else do I need to do? I need to Times New Roman 11. There we are. And that's how you do it, folks. So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and message me on Canvas. I'll try my best to respond in a timely fashion, but otherwise, I hope these videos offer you some sort of guidance as well as the feedback that I'm providing for the first annotated bibliography entry. So, all right, y'all. Happy researching.